Welcome back, everybody, to the Philadelphia Eagles franchise here on Madden 22. Today is the series finale, the final full episode of the series. We're going to be able to wrap everything up, see all of our players retire, and finally put a bow on what has been an excellent series up to this point. Before we start, I want to point out that I've been having issues with the save files throughout the long-term simulation. I had to redo the entire last season, which was a little bit annoying, but what can you do? Leave it to Madden 22 to throw me one more curveball before we switch over to the new game. I force won and force lost all of the same games, so we finished with the same record. We had the same result in the playoffs. I didn't do it for every team, but I did it for us, so at least our results were pretty much the same. The big storyline at the end of the last episode was the possible retirement of wide receiver Devonta Smith. Had we won the Super Bowl, I think Smith would have rode on into the sunset and called it a career, but now he doesn't seem as sure what he wants to do. Maybe he wants to return for a 14th season in the NFL. Interestingly enough, the same team who won the Super Bowl at the end of last episode, the London Monarchs, ended up winning this one after all. In their first season of existence, they are the champs. So in the retirements phase of the offseason, we had one player retire, but it was not Devonta Smith. Instead, it was a different big-time player in our team's core, Nehemiah Richardson, who calls it a career after 12 seasons. Richardson was the very first player drafted in this series, the number 3 overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, and he has been every worth that top 3 selection. Of our core players in this series, Richardson has by far regressed the quickest, which has been a big surprise to me. In the first long-term sim episode, I said that I thought he was going to regress the slowest, because at his peak, he was a little bit better than everybody else, but that was unfortunately not the case. We had Richardson for the first 4 seasons of his career in the actual series itself, and then in the long-term sim, he was a really solid player. He never made the Pro Bowl, though. Now, technically, he did in the final season of last episode that wasn't saved, but still, he should have 3 or 4 Pro Bowl appearances in there. Unfortunately, I could not check his career stats. I have to do that the week before everybody retires, so I had to manually add up all of Richardson's career numbers. Richardson would finish with 970 tackles and 26 interceptions, a very solid 12-year career for our lockdown corner, Nehemiah Richardson. I went through the rest of the offseason pretty quickly, nothing overly notable happened, and that'll bring us to the 14th season overall of the series, the, 9th season of a long-term sim, and the first season today. The offensive line is not in the best of shapes, but the rest of the offense looks pretty good. The defense is certainly different without Nehemiah Richardson, the second longest tenured player on the roster, only behind wide receiver Devonta Smith. I simulated through the rest of the season. Hopefully we can make the playoffs for a 12th straight year, and that will be the case as we go 10-7, good enough to win the division. Malachi Madison actually got hurt. He missed 4 games, so Donovan Krause had to come in at quarterback, and he actually played pretty well, not going to lie. Keon was our other notable performer. He had 1,500 yards on 106 catches. Devonta Smith with 10 touchdowns in what I'm expecting to be his final season. 12 sacks for Jabari Achabe, another good year for the pass rush. And Zebediah Phoenix had a strong campaign as well. So for a second straight season, we have a one last hurrah storyline. And again, it's for Devonta Smith. I cannot see him sticking around another season. I would be utterly shocked by that. So I think that this really is the end for Devonta Smith. Hopefully we can get him that championship ring, starting with the Minnesota Vikings, who recently signed Patrick Mahomes out of free agency. They've kept a few pieces of their team together. They still have Chevelle Armandou at running back. They still have Money Motique and Justin Jefferson at wide receiver. And we would end up winning pretty handedly, 31-14. So that is now 12 straight seasons, not just with a playoff berth, but with a playoff win. Malachi Madison outplays Patrick Mahomes in the victory. Keon had a strong day as well. Overall, a really solid performance from the team, leading us to the divisional round where we head up to Lambeau to face all against the Green Bay Packers, who have also kept their offense intact. They still have Jordan Love at quarterback. They still have Smash Williams, Isaiah Thomas III, Dominic Porter. They have a few other notable names as well, but we would end up winning despite a horrible performance for Malachi Madison. We took the victory 24-16, meaning we are going back to the NFC Championship. Jabari Achabe with 3 sacks on defense. Our opponent is the Los Angeles Rams, who were horrible for most of this series, but the past 5 or so seasons, they've been really good. they've had a revolving door at quarterback. This year, it's 36-year-old Tua Tagovailoa, who ended up not just winning the MVP, but beating us in the NFC Championship 21-17. So the Rams are going to the Super Bowl with a 102-yard performance in the air from former Metropolis Bulldog Zach Fuller. So if the Rams would go on to the Super Bowl, they would end up playing against the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 69. Nice. So what does this mean for Devonta Smith? Again, the team falls just short, and he still seems uncertain. I would still be really surprised if he stuck around, but that would be awesome if we could get him for another season. As for the Pro Bowl roster, no Malachi Madison for the first time in forever, but we do have Xander Vanderwall for the Colts. Keon and Tazwell Hubbard both made it, along with a few other guys on our team as well. Jabari Achabe is back. Zaire Savage is back. Former Eagle Ford Chavez ends up getting in. So, there you go. Pretty talented list of Pro Bowlers. The Patriots ended up beating the Rams in the Super Bowl with veteran linebacker Chadrick Watson winning the game's MVP. The Patriots are led by head coach Dan Campbell, who finally gets a ring after being so close so many times with the Detroit Lions. It's kind of like Andy Reid, who was never able to get over the hump with Philadelphia, goes over to Kansas City, and finally gets that championship. So here with retirements, we have two big names, but again, no Devonta Smith. Instead, it's C.J. Thomas and Keon, who are both retiring after 13 years respectively. Two phenomenal players calling it a career as we start with cornerback C.J. Thomas, who has been an unbelievable player for us. Talk about a ball hawk. My favorite play in football is the interception, and nobody on this channel has done that better than this man right here, C.J. Thomas, who was drafted in the second round in 2022, became a starter in his second season, and he did not look back. 25 interceptions in the actual series itself. In the long-term sim, he did slow down on the interceptions a little bit, but he is still a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Best Defensive Back Award winner, finishing with over 1,000 tackles and 45 interceptions. That's a lot. As for Keon, he retires after 13 seasons as well at the age of 35. He really hasn't gotten much worse. He's still at 93 overall, and he still has a lot left in the tank. I'm pretty sure he led the NFL in receiving yards this season, so I think he has another few seasons left in the tank, but he just wants to retire now, and you can't really blame him. Keon burst onto the scene early, his first 3 seasons racking up over 1,000 yards as the number 2 receiver. But then in his 4th season, 2025, he went off, breaking the single-season record for receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Keon had an unbelievable career, making the Pro Bowl 6 times. He had 1,176 catches, 6,302 yards, and 121 touchdowns. In terms of receiving yards, he finishes 6th all-time. Undoubtedly a Hall of Fame caliber career for Keon, but with a legacy score of 14,861, he will just miss out on the cutoff for the Hall of Fame, which is set at 15,000. Madden's legacy score logic is kind of stupid. I don't get how his legacy score is lower than a guy like Zaire Savage, who has less than 100 sacks in his career, but okay, you to you, EA. Patrick Mahomes retires with the Vikings. Matt Miller retires, longtime Jet. Javonte Williams, second all-time in rushing touchdowns, only behind Ezekiel Elliott. He ends up retiring. Elijah Moore, Deshaun Watson, they both retire as well. Bunch of former Westlake players here. Foyedaki Bola, Lamar Gallagher, Marcus Crum, they retire as well. A notable omission from this list is 36-year-old Devonta Smith, who is going to stick it out for another year. Very big surprise, but it looks like Smith will go into the 15th season of his career. In free agency, we decided to spend pretty big, going after Kyle Pitts and Khalil Onobanjo, both longtime Jacksonville Jaguars. We're kind of getting revenge on the Jaguars for beating us in the Super Bowl like 10 years ago, but okay. I also went after myself at punter, so that's cool. Rod Roberson ends up signing with the Ravens. Hopefully he gets an opportunity to start, but they still have Lamar Jackson. So I think Roberson's going to be a backup for another year, which is stupid, but again, Madden logic, not the best. So this is what the lineup looks like going into the new season. Kyle Pitts was signed to play wide receiver, so Booch gets to keep his spot at tight end, and Pitts will hopefully replace Keon. Zaire Savage will miss the first 6 weeks of the year. He suffered a knee injury in the divisional round last year against the Packers, and he still needs time to recover, so we'll be without him for a little bit. Simulating through the rest of the season, and we would end up going 9-8, which will not get us in the playoffs. For the first time since Season 2, the 2022 season, we will not be in the postseason. That's 12 straight seasons of not just making the playoffs, but winning at least one playoff game. There's no shot any other team in NFL history has won a playoff game in 12 straight seasons. I can't even imagine who could have. I don't think New England would have, because Tom Brady got injured in 2008, right in the middle of their launch streak. And I highly doubt they were able to win a playoff game in 12 consecutive seasons. So that has to be a record on our part as we look at the stats for the season. We started the year off rough, and we had like a 4-game win streak at the end. But unfortunately, it was not enough. The NFC was a little bit too deep, and we were not able to get the job done. Devonta Smith, wide receiver 1 in the Pro Bowl. He had another fantastic season. This was Devonta Smith's first time without Keon alongside him since his rookie season, and Smith had a season matching his rookie season in terms of how good he was, but just 15 seasons later, and of course with a new quarterback. In the Super Bowl, the Buffalo Bills would end up beating the New Orleans Saints with Kyler Murray winning Super Bowl MVP. The Bills have had Josh Allen at QB really the entire series. They finally let him go. They replaced him with Kyler Murray, who's like 39 years old. And sure enough, the Bills end up winning the Super Bowl. The Bills also still have Micah Hyde, who's like 50 at this point. So, yeah, that's fun. He's 45. Close enough. There had to have been like 10 different players around the league who are in like their mid-40s and are awful, but are still on teams. I think Casey Hayward is like a 40 overall on the Denver Broncos, and I'm not exaggerating. He's literally that bad. Here are the retirements. Boog McAllister retiring with the Packers. So now the Metropolis players are starting to retire. That's how far we've gotten in. We've got a big list of retirements here. Jarek Hague, Khalil Onobanjo, Tazwell Hubbard, and Devonta Smith. So Smith finally calls it a career after 15 seasons, along with running back Tazwell Hubbard, who is done after 13 years. Let's talk about Tazwell Hubbard, who's been an awesome starting running back for us since we drafted him in the first round out of Westlake. Hubbard has been a phenomenal player since we got him, and he has not wavered. Outside of his rookie season, he's scored double-digit touchdowns in every single season that he's played. He also has gotten over 1,000 yards every single season, except for one that he tore his ACL halfway through, so he didn't really have the chance to do so. Just the total model of consistency. You know what you're going to get with Hubbard. And I think his career as a whole really represents what this channel is about, because we were first introduced to him when he was a sophomore in high school at Burmester High. We saw his high school career. We saw his entire college career at Westlake, where he was a great player in the backfield alongside longtime New York Jet Matt Miller. And we saw his entire NFL career. He only made 4 Pro Bowls, but despite that, he ran for nearly 17,000 yards and almost 200 touchdowns. He also had a solid career in the air. His numbers are not as high as they could have been with Rosemont St. Clair on the team for a while, but he is 7th all-time in rushing yards and 5th all-time in rushing touchdowns. So an unbelievable career for Tazwell Hubbard, who with a legacy score of over 19,000, will be going into the Hall of Fame, our first Hall of Fame player of the series, and a very deserved one in Tazwell Hubbard. Let's shift the focus to the other big retirement on the offensive side of the ball, Devonta Smith, who has been by far the longest tenured player on the team. Other than Jason Kelsey, he was the only player on the day one roster who was on the Super Bowl team in Season 5 who beat Indianapolis. Devonta Smith was the star rookie who burst onto the scene at the beginning of the series, and he has not looked back. An unbelievable career for Smith, who's been an awesome receiver the last 15 seasons. Very similar to Keon in the sense that he had awesome numbers throughout his career, but his legacy score is not enough to make the Hall of Fame, which is stupid because he absolutely deserves it. Smith was great even towards the end of his career. I think his final season, he led the league in yards. We've had so many guys who in their final seasons of their careers, they've had some of their best seasons. Smith made the Pro Bowl 6 times, Best Receiver of the Year award twice, finishing with nearly 1,300 catches, 17,400 yards, and 156 touchdowns. In terms of yards, he finishes 5th all-time. In terms of touchdowns, he is tied for 2nd with Randy Moss, only trailing Jerry Rice. And in terms of receptions, he finishes in 6th. An awesome career for Devonta Smith, who never really got that much worse, just like Keon. He's still an 89 overall. Hats off to Devonta Smith. He's been a great player for us since episode 1. He has a higher legacy score than Terry McLaurin, whose receiving numbers are even better. Again, that just goes to show this game's stupidity with the receiving legacy scores. I want to talk about Russell Ingram Jr. real quick, retiring with the Chiefs, because he has a really fun story. Former Westlake player, was a top pick by the Titans, never really panned out, traded to the Rams where he was unreal. Talk about what a change of scenery can do for you. Ingram is an 8-time Pro Bowler with 164 career sacks, which is tied for 8th all-time with Coleman Rasmussen. Some other former players from this series include Winston Johnson. There's Jamar Chase retiring. We're continuing to see a lot of former Westlake players here. Hannibal Savage and Jedrick Wills retired, both former Eagles. They were both on the original Super Bowl team. So there you go, another offseason in the books. That'll bring us to 2035 as we have only a few more players left. I think we have 6. Phoenix and Madison headline the list along with Achebe, Onwosu, Orient, and Savage. I think Madison and Phoenix are going to be the last 2 guys to retire. Even though they're the oldest, they play kicker and quarterback, which those positions tend to stay a little bit longer. We spent a lot of money in free agency. I think the most interesting one was running back Avion DeBose. We need a replacement for Tazwell Hubbard, and he's going to be the guy for the time being. So this is what the lineup looks like going into the new season. The offensive skill position players are gone. No more Hubbard, no more Smith, no more Keon. The defense has stayed a little bit more intact than the offense. We only have 1 offensive player left with quarterback Malachi Madison. I do think the roster is honestly the best it's been in a little while, and it showed as we go 10-7. Malachi Madison had a great season showing that he does not need Hubbard and Smith and Keon to be a great player, although those 3 guys certainly did help. Avion DeBose was okay. Not as good as Tazwell Hubbard, but not bad. Kasim Walden, who we signed in free agency, had a really good season for us, kind of out of nowhere. And then the defense was solid as well. Jabari Achebe with his first single-digit sack season in a while, although he did have 9, which is quite respectable. So we're playing against the Rams again here in the first round. I feel like the Rams always beat us in the playoffs. They still have their awesome receiver duo of Jody Gentry and Zach Fuller. Their quarterback is Pat Bryant, although they still have Tua. We finally beat the Rams 28-14. It seems like we've never been able to get over the hump against them, but we finally did it. Thank God. So we are moving on here to the divisional round where we will once again play against the Green Bay Packers, who look quite a bit different from when we faced off against them a couple seasons ago. No Smash Williams, he's hurt. No more Isaiah Thomas III. No more Jordan Love. They had a new quarterback at the helm, and they still beat us 28-13. So we are once again eliminated in the hands of the Green Bay Packers. Scott Monroe leading the way for them at QB as the Packers go to the NFC Championship. Zaire Savage had a nice game with 2 sacks, but unfortunately it's not enough as we look at the Pro Bowl rosters. Malachi Madison, QB1 for the NFC. No Tazwell Hubbard. That still feels weird to me. We've got a few other former Metropolis players. Georgie Bucciarielli from our team included among them. Other than that, I don't really see any other of our guys. Darsheem Brooks Jr. got in, so there's another one, along with Joko Onwosu. So we ended up with 4 Pro Bowlers. Not too bad. The Packers ended up winning the Super Bowl over the Jets, and Scott Monroe takes home the Super Bowl MVP. So now for the retirements here in 2036. Got plenty of other big-time names here. And for us, we have 6 players retiring. Edmund Orient, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Fabian Suggs, Donovan Barrington, Fred Campbell, and Zaire Savage are all retiring. Let's talk about the 2 players most notable in this series, starting with safety Edmund Orient, who has been a really solid starter for us in the secondary over the last 13 seasons. As a rookie, he mainly played at nickel corner. In the past 12 seasons, he has been shut down over at 3 safety. Orient was at his best, really the final season of the actual series in 2025, where he got 4 interceptions and really played well. He made 2 Pro Bowls in his career. Nothing overly wild, a legacy score of around 4,000, but still a very solid career for him as he finishes with 934 tackles and 16 interceptions. As for Zaire Savage, he retires with a legacy score at over 18,000. What a career for the big defensive tackle Zaire Savage, who will be going into the Hall of Fame. Savage's career started off a little bit slowly, but then he really got it going in year 3 with 13-plus sacks and never really looked back. He finishes with 6 Pro Bowl appearances and 103.5 sacks, Really solid career for the man up the middle in Zaire Savage. Donovan Barrington, former Metropolis Bulldog, he's pretty notable. Some other big-time names here include Niles Onwualu from the Houston Texans. He had an unbelievable career. I'll get back to him in a minute. Zayden Savage and Penei Sewell retired. Jaquarian Alabaster, Coleman Rasmussen. A lot of big-time pass rushers. Justin Herbert retires, and then going down the board here, a few former Westlake players. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, and Jalen Hurts all retire. Very solid 17-year career for Hurts, most of which he spent with the Carolina Panthers, throwing for nearly 500 touchdowns. Highly productive career for Jalen Hurts with the Panthers. And even though I think we made the right move by letting him go, that also really worked out for Hurts' career as well, as he got to really blossom with the Panthers. Only 4 more players left: Onwosu, Achebe, Madison, and Zebediah Phoenix. It's also worth noting that Jabari Achebe leads all active players in sacks at 168, which is currently 9th all-time. In free agency, I spent all of our money. I think the most interesting one here was wide receiver Isaiah Thomas III, who unretired. He had a really long career with the Packers, retires, then they win a Super Bowl without him, and then he comes back. He did not end up staying on the roster. I think the game automatically cut him or something. I'm pretty sure he got a job elsewhere, but still, I don't know why he never played on our team, which was odd, but we do have a lot of receivers, so I guess it's probably in the best for his career that he gets to start somewhere else. This is the lineup for the 2037 season. Plenty more retirements. The game also signed his linebacker Gordon Waters-Key, who's like 36 years old, but he is X-Factor, and he's part of the Waters-Key family, so I guess that's pretty notable. We ended up going 6-11. Our worst record in the entire series thus far, whether it was the actual series or the long-term sim. Malachi Madison threw 24 interceptions. The rest of the team really wasn't all that bad. Our new top receiver, Austin Peoples, had a great season. The defense was solid. Jabari Achebe with another double-digit sack here. Zebediah Phoenix was pretty bad too, but still, I don't know how we only won 6 games. I get the turnovers were high, but I guess maybe it was bad luck. Obviously, Malachi Madison did not make the Pro Bowl. Maybe he's washed. Could this be the end for Malachi Madison, who I think still has a lot left in the tank, but maybe the high interception number suggests otherwise. The Tennessee Titans ended up beating the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl, 2 teams that we are considering for the Madden 23 franchise series, which of course will be revealed tomorrow. So the Titans end up getting a championship there first, led by quarterback C.C. Vaughn at 37 years old. So C.C. Vaughn, the former high school teammate of Tazwell Hubbard at Burmester High, is now a Super Bowl champion. As we go into the retirements phase, here is Osiris Jefferson, calling it a career. He has the highest legacy score of anybody who was drafted in this series. What a career for Osiris Jefferson at 35 years old, who was an unbelievable player with the Detroit Lions, one of the greatest of all time in NFL history. He never won a Super Bowl, but other than that, he was damn good. He was drafted with normal development, remember, so even if you have normal development, that doesn't mean you're bad. He ended up being the all-time leader in rushing yards by over 3,000 and the all-time leader in rushing touchdowns. As for our team, we had a few players call it a career, as you'll see here in just a moment. They're saving us for the end, I guess, but sure enough, we did have Gordon Waters-Key end up retiring, along with Gogurt Spiffy, Avion DeBose, Joko Nwosu, Donovan Krause, and Jabari Achebe. So that's 6 more players retiring. Starting with Joko Nwosu, who's been roaming the secondary for the last 15 seasons. He's been a really fun player, somebody who can sort of do a little bit of everything. And he stayed pretty good up until the end where he regressed into the mid-70s. I think he was better for longer, at least in terms of rating, compared to our other safety, Edmund Orient. He finishes with over 1,300 tackles, 59 for a loss, and 26 interceptions. As for Jabari Achebe, he retires with a legacy score of over 27,000. What an interesting career for Achebe, who was great as a rookie, 15.5 sacks, and then the health issues came, and I really wasn't sure if he'd be a long-term piece here, but sure enough he was, and it took a little bit for him to get going, but he really got going. 5 Pro Bowl appearances, he had 20 sacks one season. I think he won 3 Defensive Player of the Years, finishing with 179.5 sacks, which is 6th all-time. What a career for Jabari Achebe, who statistically, at least legacy score-wise, is the best player in this series. So shout out to him, former Westlake Hornet, calling it a career. And then right below them, Xander Vanderwall retires after 16 seasons. Our former starting quarterback, only for 1 season, It's a shame it didn't work out, but he was able to spend the rest of his career in Indianapolis, where he finished with over 50,000 passing yards and over 400 passing touchdowns. As for the rest of the retirements, a lot of other notable names here. James Jackson, former Westlake Hornet, retires. He ended up being a Hall of Famer. Plenty of other highly drafted players throughout the series retiring as well. So that'll bring us through the 2037 offseason into 2038. We only have 2 more players left to go with our core team. Zebediah Phoenix and Malachi Madison, the final 2 players still on the roster. Again, we spent all of our money. The big signing is going after a really good running back in Austin Conley. We haven't been able to replace Tazwell Hubbard yet, so hopefully he can do that. Linebacker Jarek Hague also unretired, so that's cool. We were able to get everybody except for the running back Conley. He signed with San Francisco, so I had to downgrade and go with Terrell Beckham instead. It does save us a lot of money, but running back's a very important position in this game, and I'd rather have the young 90-plus X factor than some 30-year-old middle-of-the-road running back who's not really going to get much better. So because of that, I ended up using the 6th overall pick on one with Cordell Jenkins, who's a 78 overall, only with normal development. But hey, Osiris Jefferson ended up having normal development too, and he is the NFL's all-time rushing leader, so we can hope. Here's a look at the lineup going into the next season. It's really weird not having our normal skill position guys like Smith and Keon and Hubbard. They are all gone. Nobody left from the defense in the actual series either. Of course, we're only down to Malachi Madison and Zebediah Phoenix. Phoenix has actually regressed quicker than Madison. He's only an 80, whereas Madison is still in the low 90s. We ended up going 10-7, which gets us 3rd place in the division, but is good enough for a wild card spot. Malachi Madison threw for, again, a lot of interceptions, but it didn't really matter. A rookie running back got 3 carries, even though I moved him to the starting lineup. I don't know why that happened, but we made the playoffs, so it's all good. Austin Peoples, the receiver, had an unbelievable season, and then the defense was pretty solid too. No double-digit sack seasons from everybody, but still a good season nonetheless. So we're going to play against the Dallas Cowboys here in the first round. They're led by Nathan Henry, who's been their quarterback the last 12 seasons, replacing Dak Prescott. The only 2 notable players are their linebackers, Steven Miranda and Jamar Stuckey, both former Metropolis Bulldogs, and we lost 24-30. So this is the first time in this entire series, long-term simulation or not, that we made the playoffs and lost our first playoff game. We've won a playoff game every single season we've made it, except for this year. So history has been made at the hands of our arch rivals. Here in the 2038 Pro Bowl, again, not a ton of recognizable names. All the real players are, for the most part, done. The Westlake guys are all regressing and fading out. The Metropolis players are really hitting their primes, but even so, those guys are starting to get a little bit older too, with some of them really starting to retire. Unfortunately, the Cowboys ended up winning the Super Bowl over the Monarchs, so the Cowboys have now won 3 rings in this series. That's more than us. I'm quite disappointed by that. Here for the 2038 retirements, a lot of notable names around the league. There's Osiris Young, former Metropolis player and Eagle. Ladarian Mobley and Jarek Hague retired from our team, so that means no Zebediah Phoenix and no Malachi Madison. Both of them will be back for at least 1 more season. Kyle Pitts retires as, ironically, an Atlanta Falcon, which I find kind of funny. And then going down the board there, Darsheen Brooks Jr., former Eagle and former Westlake player. So in free agency, again, I spent a lot of money. I wanted to go after Bryson Barraclaw, who spent the last 14 seasons in Seattle. And then other than that, I tried to bring back a lot of our former players. I also wanted to sign Zahir Yahya, who's been with the Jets pretty much his whole career. He's a great pass rusher. And we ended up getting pretty much everybody for the most part. So we got pretty lucky here in free agency, bringing us to the 2039 season. We have not won a playoff game 2 consecutive seasons, so hopefully this year breaks the mark. Malachi Madison is now only an 88 overall. He, I think, lost like 4 ratings points last year, so now he is starting to regress a little bit quicker. Zebediah Phoenix also went down 4. He is now a 76, the lowest he's been in his NFL career. But it doesn't matter because we still made the playoffs. We go 10-7, good enough to get a wild card spot. Malachi Madison was okay, decent enough. Cordell Jenkins scored 13 touchdowns. Austin Peoples had another great season. Peoples has been an awesome signing. He has been phenomenal for us. And then Zebediah Phoenix missed 2 kicks all year. Even as a 40-year-old, 76 overall kicker, Zebediah Phoenix had probably the second best season of his career. He only finished 4th in the best kicker voting, which is stupid, but okay. So here is the Rams. We've played them a lot in the playoffs recently, and we've lost a lot to them recently. They have Pat Bryant at the quarterback position at 33 years old, and we beat them 24-6. The defense really played well. Malachi Madison, 2 touchdowns. Pat Bryant, 3 interceptions. Bucciarelli with over 100 yards, which is good to see. So a good performance here for the defense as we face off against the Minnesota Vikings in the second round of the playoffs. The Vikings have lost a lot of their recognizable faces, but they still have Justin Jefferson on the roster, who is like 40 years old at this point, and they would beat us in overtime, 27-24, despite a great game for Malachi Madison throwing 3 touchdowns. Bucciarelli over 100 yards once again, but unfortunately it is not going to matter. Former Metropolis Bulldog Greg Washington with 2 sacks. I think Chadrick Watson got an interception in both playoff games. He was a Super Bowl MVP. I guess he just does really well in the playoffs for whatever reason. Here are the Pro Bowl rosters for both conferences. There you go. And then sure enough, in the Super Bowl, it seems like recently the teams who have eliminated us from the playoffs have been the ones to win the Super Bowl, and the Vikings kept that trend going. They beat the Steelers 31-28. So the Vikings, in their 5th Super Bowl appearance, finally get a ring with quarterback Dom Hughes winning Super Bowl MVP. Of course, right when Tony Sanchez leaves our team, he's the Super Bowl champ. Justin Jefferson now 41 years old, by the way. You think that's funny? Gronk is 51 years old. He has officially outlasted his teammate Tom Brady, who retired at the age of 50. What a weird scenario. So here are the retirements. We have 3 players calling it a career. But again, no Zebediah Phoenix and no Malachi Madison. So both of them are going to be staying for at least one more season. Jakari Johnson retires from the Lions. Detroit has lost pretty much all of their core as well. Johnson would sure enough end up being a well-deserved Hall of Famer. He's been a great competitor in the NFC for many seasons. In free agency, here are our authors. I tried to bring a few players back. I went after safety Ross Robertson. He's been a Pro Bowler a few times. And I wanted to sign Manuel Castillo as our backup quarterback. He's been the starter the past 3 seasons in New England. Before that, he never really got a chance to start, and he's not really good enough to start anywhere else. So I figured, why not let him retire here? This is what the lineup looks like for the next season. We have a 65 overall at running back. Our main 2 running backs both got hurt in preseason, and we don't have money to sign anybody else. So we have a 65 at running back for the meantime, which is not ideal. The team is only an 84 overall. We're not what we once were. Zebediah Phoenix is a 72 overall. He has fallen off the face of the earth. But we went 13-4, getting a first-round bye. I cannot remember the last time we've gotten a first-round bye. Malachi Madison had one of the best years of his career in his 19th NFL season, despite the fact that we could not run the ball. Cordell Jenkins played in 3 games. He's been a total bust for the 6th overall pick. But hey, we still went 13-4. The defense was pretty solid as well. And Zebediah Phoenix had another good season, only missing 3 kicks. Madison finished 3rd in MVP, 1 spot ahead of Rod Robertson, who's developed into a very good player with the Baltimore Ravens. Madison ended up winning Offensive Player of the Year. So we're playing against the 8-9 Falcons in the divisional round. A few seasons ago, the Falcons were 8-9 and beat us in a playoff game, so I'm not going to take them for granted. And sure enough, history repeats itself. Atlanta wins 24-10. So despite getting a first-round bye, we lose to a team who finished under 500. So Atlanta's going back to the NFC Championship, and we are eliminated. But Malachi Madison did get QB1 in the Pro Bowl at, 40 years old? He's either 39 or 40. He's an old man. Put it that way. There really aren't any quarterbacks left from the series. I think Anthony Cortez III is still with the Giants. Drake Nelson might still be with the Raiders. But that's about it. Everybody else, for the most part, has pretty much faded out. The Rams ended up winning another championship. Eric Trent wins Super Bowl MVP. So the Rams get their 2nd ring in franchise history. The Rams have been so close for really close to a decade now, and they finally get over the hump. Good for them. Here are the retirements. Zach Fuller, former Metropolis Bulldog, retires as a Super Bowl champ. And there's Zebediah Phoenix, calling it a career with Bryson Barraclaw. So Phoenix is done after 19 seasons at the age of 42. He's a 68 overall. His kicking numbers have really regressed. His speed has not gone down at all. He still has 87 speed. Phoenix has been our kicker since the 2022 season, and he has been dominant. 2025 was definitely the best season of his career. That was the year that he only missed 2 kicks, our first Super Bowl year. He finishes with 4 Pro Bowl appearances, 3 Best Kicker awards. Pretty good for a 7th rounder. He finishes with a career legacy score of over 13,000. So with that being said, and Phoenix being gone, there's Didi Santander and a few really good seasons with Chicago. Carleek McAllister retires. He finished with 200 sacks, all of which were as a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Greg Waters-Key retires. He spent pretty much his whole career with the Dolphins. Chandler Bednarik, former Bulldog, longtime Philadelphia Eagle, he is done as well. So the only player left from our core team is the quarterback, Malachi Madison, who's now 40 years old. I've got to assume the end of the road is near for him. Quarterbacks do tend to stay a little bit longer than others, but he is 40. He did reach the open market for the first time, but we are going to try to re-sign him along with 5 former Metropolis players, with Glover, Abubakar, Cox, who was already on the team, Outlaw, and Vea. Everybody accepted except for Mafu Vea. After 11 seasons with the Eagles, he signs with the Las Vegas Raiders, and we ended up signing a different tackle as his replacement, who's not honestly that much worse than him, but he is a lot cheaper, so maybe it's for the better. This is what the team looks like going into 2041, possibly the final season of this series. We're going to go as long as Malachi Madison's career goes. Once he's done, then we will be all finished with this franchise series. A lot of former Metropolis players on the roster, which is kind of cool. Most of the Westlake players are pretty much gone, so I can't really add any of them. We unfortunately only went 8-9, not good enough for a playoff spot. Malachi Madison did it of another pretty good season with 4,600 yards. Cordell Jenkins had a career high in touchdowns with 15, although he can't stay healthy to save his life. And the defense was okay as well. A lot of sacks for Hooker and Matthews with 12 or more each. And then Marquez Glover, our new kicker, was pretty solid as well. Not many names I recognize on a Pro Bowl roster. Mafu Vea did make it with the Raiders, but really for the most part, not a lot of faces who we're going to know of. The Arizona Cardinals ended up winning their first Super Bowl in franchise history over the Texans, with quarterback Richard Painter winning the game's MVP. I know nobody on this roster. Everybody here came before the actual series itself. So now we're going to look at the retirements. Is this where Malachi Madison ends up calling it a career? Mafu Vea retires after just 1 season in Las Vegas. As we continue to scroll down, there it is. Malachi Madison, along with Manuel Castillo and a few other former Metropolis players with Rashard Brown, Curtis Neal, and Napoleon Abubakar, all retire together. Malachi Madison is the final player from the actual series itself before the long-term sim. At the age of 41, in a 20-season NFL career, calls it quits. He was the number 1 overall draft pick in the 2022 draft, the first player ever drafted in this series, and the last player we're going to talk about. He spent his first 3 seasons in Indianapolis, although the first 2 are cut off, but he just wasn't great in Indianapolis. And as we talked about earlier of Russell Ingram Jr., sometimes a change of scenery is what's needed for a player to get the most out of themselves. In Madison's first season with the team, after getting traded, he won the MVP and beat his former team, the Colts, in the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl MVP. He won another regular season MVP, I believe, in 2031, and then the following season, he led us to a Super Bowl victory over the Baltimore Ravens. Madison spent 20 seasons in the NFL, 17 with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he will retire as a 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time MVP winner, 3-time Offensive Player of the Year, including one that came only a couple seasons ago. Madison finishes with over 87,000 passing yards and 665 touchdowns, both of which are top 3 all-time. In terms of passing yards, he is just 2nd behind Tom Brady, and in terms of touchdowns, he is 3rd behind Brady and Mahomes. With a legacy score of nearly 20,000 points, Madison will enter the Hall of Fame. So an awesome career for Malachi Madison. With him being done, that means there are no more players from the actual series on the roster, meaning we are not going to go through any more seasons. I ended up simulating to the preseason to wait for the Hall of Fame inductions, just to make sure, Madison would get in and all of that. So we end up with 4 Hall of Famers: Jabari Achabe, Malachi Madison, Tazwell Hubbard, and Zaire Savage. Maybe not the 4 best players during the actual series itself, but still 4 very deserving players. What a series it has been here at the Philadelphia Eagles. 5 seasons in the actual series, 16 in the long-term sim. That's 21 overall. And I really feel like we were able to build a true universe with all of these players who we've developed throughout the series. I find it funny how Gronk has outlasted everybody. He's 53 years old. Here's Casey Hayward, who's a 19 overall now, by the way. He is still with Denver, along with Bryson Barraclough, who unretired. But back to the point, before I was distracted by Gronk, it has been really fun seeing all of these players grow and developed, many of whom we were first introduced to in the prospect profiles, some of which we knew from our prior dynasties with the Westlake series and the Metropolis series. And as this episode comes to a close, it sort of wraps up the end of the Metropolis series along with the Westlake series as well. So it's kind of like 3 series all ending in one. Not many players are left. Anthony Cortez III is still here with Seattle. And then there are a few really old players still here, like Josh Jacobs, Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, obviously Gronk. But we don't have any of our guys left. I don't really see much of a reason to keep going. We've seen so many players enter the record books. We've seen so many players enter the Hall of Fame. And it has been an absolute blast following the journey of this team with these players and these storylines. I have to say, this is probably the best Madden franchise I've ever done, and definitely one of my favorite series that this channel has ever had. And it has been a pleasure here with the Philadelphia Eagles in this franchise, which started, I think, a year ago tomorrow. So, yeah, we're pretty much wrapping it up exactly after 1 year. Tomorrow will be the team reveal for the Madden 23 franchise. That'll be premiered, I believe, around 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so make sure to keep your eyes open for the time and whatnot. I'm excited to share who I'm using for the Madden 23 series. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for the final time here in the Philadelphia Eagles franchise. I hope everybody has enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out. Go Birds.